And yeah, the title of this episode, Blockbusters Still Exist, and it's titled accordingly because the Carolina Hurricanes took a huge swing, but there's a little bit, there's more rumors surrounding, or they're at least involved in some more stuff. Who knows if they're out now? It's you can't rule it out. But JT Miller has been allowed to speak with the New York Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes. Those are the two teams on the list. Who knows if there's more? But Chris, I'm gonna let you take it away here.
Well, so it's funny that when this came out the other day and I saw it, I thought it was pretty funny that we had talked a couple weeks ago about the Rangers, and I just threw out the name Mika Zibanejad as a possible trade option, and that was a no earlier. And now all of a sudden he's allowed to talk to the Miller's allowed to talk to the Rangers, and intriguing what an offer could look like on that end. And originally the Carolina Hurricanes, like you said, was the other team, but from what I had seen over the weekend, once they made the trade with Colorado and Chicago, the three-team trade, they were taken out of the conversation altogether. I guess they started with Miller when when they were allowed to have conversation. The price was too steep. They pivoted to Pettersson. That was a little too steep. And then they went right to Rantanen and Taylor Hall, which we'll get to in a little bit.
I my okay. I just want to jump in here with the way that teams have been very aggressive in the last 2 years at the trade deadline. Some teams have a do or die win now window. And I think that's where the Carolina Hurricanes, that's why they took the swing they did. And maybe they might look at that price for Miller. They might circle back and who knows? The Vancouver Canucks might not have a realistic option other than the Carolina Hurricanes come trade deadline day.
That is
If they're
possible.
serious of if the Canucks are serious about moving Miller, they might just say, you know what, it gets him off our books and it gets all the media attention out of here. So you never know.
I think we got what, month and a week, probably 5 weeks till the deadline. I think you're going to see that door open to more teams with him having a conversation. And then obviously, as we get closer, the price will drop, like you said.
And who knows, maybe other teams will say like this price is astronomical, like it's way too steep for us. And Carolina might be sitting there saying, hey, here's our minimum, and it's higher than every other team. And it still may not be a great return, but who knows? Like the whole JT Miller situation, it's interesting. And we'll get into more of that later in the episode with a bit of rumor stuff. But let's the meat and potatoes of this episode is the Mikko Rantanen blockbuster. And I got a discussion topic is could this spark more teams to move their pending UFAs? But first, I want to get into the Rantanen blockbuster in and of itself. The Hurricanes acquire Mikko Rantanen, Taylor Hall, and the rights to Nils Junstorp or Juntorp. The Colorado Avalanche acquire Martin Necas, Jack Drury, a 2025 second round pick, a 2025 fourth round pick, while the Chicago Blackhawks retain half of Mikko Rantanen's salary and also get a 2025 third round pick, which was their own pick, I believe. And what a trade. And Chris, my first NHL game in the press box. So that was quite the night for me. I was a lot of emotions on my end, and then I'm speaking to a lot of media people. But the lady from the Salt Lake Tribune, her and I are sitting. I was sitting with them visiting media. That's where I was sitting, and
Mhm.
we're all like, "Holy crap!" Like the second that Sarah Volley tweeted that Mikko Rantanen was being traded to the Carolina Hurricanes, we're like, "Oh, all right." There has to be a guy like Aho, Svechnikov, or Jarvis going back. And I was like, it was all of us were saying there was no way that the Hurricanes were getting out of that without giving a big player. And they got out of it without giving a big player. Like, Chris, what was your initial reaction to that?
So I was at dinner in Boston, and my phone is just going off nonstop, and I'm like, something's wrong. And I didn't have my son with me, so I thought something was wrong with my son. So I got up, excused myself, went to the bathroom, and the first thing I see, and you said his name, all I saw was a tweet that says Jarvis was not included in this trade. I'm like, what trade? What just happened? So I'm going through Twitter now, and I see Ronton's name, and then I see Hall's name, and I'm like, this is a massive trade. And then I realize both of them are going to Carolina. I was mind blown. I'm like, this has got to be a bigger return. Like, what else is coming if Jarvis isn't included? And then all of a sudden, like, it was a long night before all the pieces finally trickled in. I mean, it was
Yeah.
probably 10 o'clock my time. We're
We were
driving
halfway
home.
through the third period in the Jets game by the time everything finalized.
I
Like,
was
it
sitting
was
there, and I was like, where is everything? Like, this has got to be more coming.
is yeah, no, we are like I was talking to a lot of the Winnipeg media, and I was talking to the visiting media, the two people from the visiting media, and we were taken aback. It was wild for a trade like of that magnitude to happen on a Friday night. Just it was crazy, and it's a story I'm going to tell forever, obviously, because not every day you get your first game in the press box, and like Taylor Hall for a first overall pick. This is his 7th NHL team. It's obviously a much needed restart for him, and it allows them to get into a competitive market again. Mikko Rantanen I can't remember when he was drafted. I think it was like 7th or 8th overall, and it might be lower. But a player of his magnitude, he's arguably a top 3 winger in the league right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of player that Carolina is getting. You're adding the known chemistry that he has had before with Sebastian Aho because they grew up together and they played together.
Mm-hmm.
Like Carolina gets out of this trade without giving up a big player, and that's no disrespect to Martin Necas. Colorado gets a good center in Necas, but when you look at Necas and Rantanen, do you think those pieces as the main pieces going back and forth align in this trade? Because I
Nope.
don't,
Nope.
truthfully. They also didn't give up a first round pick.
Yeah.
And that's another thing to realize. Now, I remember like there was a lot of people saying like, "Oh, Carolina isn't done" and all that, or not Carolina, Colorado isn't done. And I just remember we're all frantically sitting there like, there's no way Colorado is going to make a swing like this. And Crosby's name floated out.
Well,
And
Kevin Weeks had a lot to do with that, posting the
yeah.
Pittsburgh skyline.
And who knows, maybe he was posting that because he knows something that we don't. But I don't think, personally, I don't think that was the right time to put some more gasoline on that fire.
No. Nope.
And yeah, it was a crazy night. Like, it's not every day you get a massive trade, a blockbuster trade like that. And I had I don't want to say I knew he was getting traded because I'm not an insider, but I almost had that gut feeling that Rantanen wasn't going to be a Colorado Avalanche by the end of the season.
Yeah, I thought he would be, but I was a little shocked he was moved.
See, where I'm coming from is he already turned down a $12 million extension. He wants to be the highest paid winger in the league. he also wants to make more than McKinnon on the team. Everybody knew that. The other thing that Colorado has to look at they're looking at their team. They obviously have an internal cap. And they're obviously looking 2 to 3 years down the line when you got Cale Makar. He's making $9 million right now. He signed that 6-year deal, and it was known that he took a pay cut so that they could try to win again.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, Makar's a really good player, but if $9 million is what he took for a pay cut, you're looking at maybe 14, 15 million for Makar when he's due again.
Well, that's a good question because we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It makes me wonder too, with the extension of Blackwood, did that kind of play the hand a little bit here? We got to move him now because we extended our goalie, and like you said, Makar is going to be extended soon.
And that's going to be very expensive. But this whole Rantanen blockbuster isn't about the team itself or the Colorado Avalanche itself. Like, we could go on forever about how this affects the team, and we'll get into that in a minute. But my first topic that I want to talk about regarding the Rantanen blockbuster is, could this spark more teams to move pending UFAs? My first thing is, you look at the New York Islanders with Brock Nelson, the Winnipeg Jets with Nikolai Ehlers, guys with high caliber, or guys who are high caliber forwards or defensemen, even like Rasmus Anderson in Calgary too. Could we see teams who are in win now mode trade their pending UFAs to teams that they know that player will sign there anyways and try to recoup at least something?
I can see it. I mean, I think we talked about it last week or the week before with the Four Nations break. I think this is going to be what starts it if it's going to happen. I think you're going to see some deals coming.
The whole thing with that is Lindholm got traded in January last year. There's always a good trade or two in January. And there's always a trade deadline before the trade deadline. That's kind of how it is. But I think this could just, like you were saying, I think this could be what catapults it all. So, and yeah. When I look at pending UFAs, when you look at the UFA market, Carolina had to be very certain that they were going to be able to re-sign Rantanen. Because if you lose him in free agency, you didn't swing as much as you could. Granted, there's also other UFAs on the market, like big name UFAs too, but is there that Mikko Rantanen caliber player available?
Not that I see.
Here, and another thing that I've seen is people are saying, oh yeah, Mikko Rantanen might resign in Colorado in unrestricted free agency. And you know how chaotic that would be? If there was a handshake deal under the table and he does that.
That would be something.
Yeah. I don't want to speculate too much, but I saw something on Twitter. It was just a little throw out kind of deal. No speculation really there, but now the other discussion topic about things is, did the Colorado Avalanche lose the Mikko Rantanen trade, or is it too early to say? And Chris, do you think it's too early to say?
On paper, yeah, they lost it. But, you look at what they did yesterday with both of the guys they acquired in this trade, and, Necas had 2 assists, and Drury had a goal. So are they sliding in and fitting in well? I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, they played, right? Rantanen and Hall. They both played.
Yeah.
They didn't do any. I mean, so that was their first game, Rantanen and Hall, and granted, neither of the 2 guys in Colorado are on the score sheet their first game. They did in the second game. So right now, on paper with the names, yes. in a week, I might have a different answer for you.
Okay. So I feel like this could be an interesting discussion topic that we have maybe when Jade is with us again.
I mean, I look at the standings right now in Colorado where they are and Carolina where they are. Carolina's okay, I think. I mean, we'll talk about the reason why I think that in a little while. But Colorado, with the moves they made and what they got, they could make a run to be in that third spot, maybe even second spot in the Central Division, with the way things have seen after 2 games with their new acquisitions.
So I'm going to pull up the standings very quick, but just kind of the way their position is. Minnesota has been on a downslide, but like realistically, the Central Division should be Winnipeg and Colorado should be neck and neck for first. Dallas and Minnesota and St. Louis should be fighting for third, fourth, and fifth.
I put Dallas in that conversation with Winnipeg and Colorado.
I can see what you're saying. Just with the punch that I've seen from Winnipeg and Colorado this season, because they've gone through the adversity that every team needs to go through in the regular season. And they went through it early in the year with how many guys were hurt at once. Like they were playing guys that were fourth line AHLers. No disrespect to them either, because the AHL is still a great place to play. You see great development in that league. But like also, we saw guys up in the NHL who had no business being there other than guys are hurt. So Colorado, having faced that adversity early on in the season, it was good for them. Dallas, I haven't seen a whole lot of adversity on their end. I haven't seen something that they're going to have to work through as a team. That's just my opinion on the team, but when you take a look at the mold of teams that go far in the playoffs, take a look at the first year that Tampa won the Cup. They were without Captain Stamkos. He came in and played 2 minutes and something odd seconds, scored a goal, and that was it. That was their adversity. Trying to think of another good example, but I can't off the top of my head. Like, Stanley Cup winning teams need that adversity, and right now, for me, Colorado is emerging as an early favorite to win the Cup. Like, that's kind of where I'm at. So, like, do you have any more thoughts on that?
You say adversity in Dallas. I think losing Sagan's a big one. He had 20 points in 19 games before he went out with that hip injury.
Okay, I can see what you're saying with the Sagan thing, but like, I don't know how to formulate my thought in this one because Sagan's a good player, but does he strike you as the game-changing player that Dallas needs night in and night out?
I mean, he can be, especially where he was playing. I think he was on the third line and the second line for a little while. So he gives you, if he's on the third line, gives you that bottom six scoring you're looking for. So it's a key piece to, a team that was towards the top. I mean, they still are, but they're not as close as they were earlier in the season to the top of the Central Division. I look at, and you talk about Colorado being a Stanley Cup team. My big thing I look at with a lot of teams that I think could win the Cup is what they have in goaltending. And that's where I put Dallas. I want to say far ahead, but maybe not far ahead of Colorado.
If Dallas can make it farther than the conference finals, and I know there's only one more round after the conference finals before people come at me about that, but if Dallas goes farther, like if Dallas goes to the Stanley Cup final in the next 2 to 3 years, with the way that with the way they built, they'll win the Cup. They just need to go through whatever playoff. Like, it's like the Leafs. The Leafs need to really just hunker down in the playoffs. Dallas, other than the 1 year in the bubble that they made the Stanley Cup final, I can't really put my finger on a team that should have won the cup with the Dallas Stars. So, like last year, they added Chris Tanev and made a couple of really good acquisitions at the deadline, but there was nothing that stood out to me about them that said, hey, watch this team. And I know Jake Ottinger, he wants to be the starter at the Four Nations, but I think he'll be the starter at the Four Nations because, one, it's an NHL-sanctioned tournament, and two, the guy in front of him might just take it as a bit of time to rest and relax. Not saying that he won't take it seriously, but the guy in front of him who's arguably going to win the Vezina and the Jennings for a second consecutive year, barring anything significant happens on the season, he's also going to be in the Hart Trophy conversation. Connor Hellebuck's having one hell of a year. With the way that like the Central Division lines up right now, you could argue 6 teams in the Central make the playoffs. If the NHL playoffs was based off of points, I can only see 2 teams out of the Pacific and 6 in the Central making the playoffs right now. That's just what I see. But then you look at St. Louis and Utah, who are well out of a playoff spot at the moment, behind LA. Just like there's a lot to say. And kind of circling back over to Colorado and Dallas, actually. They both have that element that they need to go far in playoffs. But the year that Colorado won the cup, you had guys with experience, and you had guys that knew what it took. You had veterans who knew what it took. I'm not saying Dallas didn't have that. Winnipeg hasn't had that. They don't they added at the deadline, don't get me wrong. Toffoli and Monahan were great additions, but playoffs is a whole different bear. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Chris, do you have any things to add on that?
I don't. It's gonna. I mean, that division's to me, like you said, with this trade, I disagree partially on the 6 teams in the Central.
Yeah,
I think the Kings are definitely a team in the Pacific that could get in and make a run, especially with the way Kemper's been playing. And they're supposed to be getting Doughty back. I don't know if he's playing tonight. I thought he was, but I haven't seen him. Maybe I'm missing something, but that's another team that I look at that can make a run because they have experience. The other team that we don't talk about, and we talked about them last week in the Central, is Nashville. But we won't get in too much into that, but they're one of the hottest teams in that division. And they can definitely make a run to get back in. And I think even if things struggle in Colorado, they could catch Colorado. Maybe not. 17 points is a little steep.
I think we're going to really see Colorado's endurance after this trade because 32 games left for Colorado and 34 left for Nashville. Colorado has 17 points in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're looking at a team that they've had their due, like they've paid their dues, and they've really gone through the gutter some years. Nashville, if they figure it out and they go on another heat, like if they go on a heater like the 16-0-1 after the canceled U2 concert, we could see quite a different playoff picture right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're looking at a pretty firm playoff picture for this year. I don't see it changing very much.
There's always that sleeper team.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 3 that so far that I think could have a chance that are out of it right now, or 4 actually in the West at least.
Well, if we're going to talk about sleeper teams, look at where Columbus is.
They're a team I think that's going to get in. I just think they have a lot going for them.
Now, do you see them knocking out Tampa in the wild card?
I could see them knocking out either team in the wild card.
Okay. Now teams like the set like this is becoming a playoff discussion, and
We were gonna save that probably till the Four Nations break, but
yeah, well, we'll get more into it anyways. But like, I know this kind of out of the realm of topics right now, but what do you think about Boston missing playoffs?
they're on my list of teams that I don't think get in.
Because they're holding on by a hope and a prayer. Montreal 3 points back with 2 games in hand. Tampa is 1 point back with 3 games in hand.
They're a team though all year. Whenever they slide out of the playoff spot, they somehow find a way to win the next game to get back in. And I think we saw it. I think it was over the weekend before Ottawa played last night.
Yeah,
They found a way to win. I think it was 2 straight to slide right back in to the 3 spot, and then Ottawa won last night and took the 3 spot away from them in the Atlantic. So now they have the top wild card spot.
yeah. And what about Ottawa, man? Like,
They're a team. I mean, we talked about this before we logged on with Swayman and that issue. You're seeing, I think the real true goalie taking care of business in Ottawa.
yeah, and not Swayman, Allmark being out long term right now with the back injury. It's Ottawa they're still finding ways to win, and that's showing you what they've done as a team to mature.
Right.
So